Welcome to the Daily Vivecasting. Today, the S&P 500 is splitting into two entirely different economies. SpaceX is quietly locking down the Pentagon and the moon, and Frontier AI just solved a decades-old math problem while we were sleeping.
Yeah, it is a massive day for the timeline.
It really is. We are so glad you're here with us.
Yeah.
The mission of this deep dive is to take that raw, chaotic feed of global innovation, the market data, all the cultural shifts, and basically synthesize it into the signal that actually matters to you.
Right. Think of it as your fast-paced intelligence briefing. But let's be clear right out of the gate here. While the consensus is out there loudly cheering on all these massive tech milestones, we really need to look at the second-order effects.
Absolutely.
Because beneath the surface of all this fictionless innovation, there are huge structural questions, like who is actually profiting, who is quietly consolidating global power, and, perhaps most importantly, who is getting completely left behind without even realizing it.
Okay, let's unpack that right now, because there is a stark macroeconomic reality check floating around today that perfectly illustrates that divide.
Oh, the margin data.
Exactly. The Kobesi letter published some jaw-dropping data today. Right now, the S&P 500's net profit margin, excluding financials, of course, has hit a record 15%.
Which sounds incredible.
Right. That is a massive historic high. But if you look closer, there's a serious catch. If you strip out the Magnificent Seven and the broader tech sector, the net margin for the rest of the market plummets to roughly 8%.
Wow, 8%.
Yeah, which is hovering near the absolute lowest levels we've seen since the 2020 pandemic lockdowns.
Exactly. And, the mainstream financial media is just misreading this entirely because the easy headline everyone wants to write is the market is doing incredibly well, look at these margins.
Yeah, number go up.
Right. But what that Bank of America global research data actually proves is that we no longer have a single unified market. We have a two-tiered economy now, and it's a massive systemic risk.
Okay, break that down for me. Why is it systemic?
Because on one side, you have AI and tech leaders who are functionally printing money. I mean, their margins are expanding because software and compute scale infinitely, right?
Right.
But on the other side, you have traditional non-tech companies that are being absolutely crushed by rising human labor costs, raw material inflation, legacy debt, all of it. They have zero AI leverage to offset those costs.
So for the listener who, say, has their retirement sitting in a standard S&P index fund, thinking they're safely diversified across 500 different companies. What does a 7 percentage point gap between tech and everything else actually mean for them?
It means you are staring down the barrel of an index fund crisis. You think you're buying this heavily diversified safety net, right? But what you really own is a cart pulled by 7 incredibly strong horses, dragging 493 completely exhausted ones.
That is a bleak visual.
But it's true. The health of the entire American stock market right now relies on just a handful of companies executing flawlessly. If you are a legacy business today, let's say a traditional logistics or retail company, your traditional playbook is just broken.
Because they can't compete for capital.
Exactly. You are living in an 8% margin reality, fighting tooth and nail for every single dollar, while competing for investment capital against tech giants operating in a 15% margin reality. It is a completely unsustainable dynamic.
Well, if that margin gap is the financial reality of tech consolidation, let's look at the physical reality of it, because I don't think there is a better example of concentrated market power right now than SpaceX.
Oh, definitely not.
Over the last 24 hours, the financial feeds, Zero Hedge, Watch Your Guru, Polymarket, they have completely lit up over this massive new contract.
The Space Force deal.
Yeah. The U.S. Space Force just awarded SpaceX $2.29 billion to build a military space data network based on their Starshield technology.
And for anyone listening who hears SpaceX Internet and immediately thinks of Starlink, the dish people put on their RVs, we really need to draw a hard line here.
Right, they are totally different beasts.
Elon Musk has been explicitly clear about this. Starshield is not Starlink. Starshield is being built, operated, and entirely separated for exclusive U.S. government use.
It's locked down.
Completely. It is a secure, low Earth orbit backbone designed to instantly transport massive amounts of classified data for military sensors, drones, weapons platforms across the globe. And they're supposed to have the prototype operating by the end of 2027.
The sheer scale of the infrastructure they're deploying to make this happen is staggering. Just recently, the SpaceX account confirmed they did a routine deployment of 24 more satellites.
Just a normal Tuesday for them.
Literally. But that single mundane launch pushed their operational constellation past 10,000 satellites in orbit. 10,000.
It's absurd.
They're running thousands of automated collision avoidance maneuvers every single year just to manage the orbital traffic they created. And Wall Street is just drooling over this. The data on Polymarket right now is pricing in a 72% chance that SpaceX hits a $2 trillion valuation when they IPO in 2026.
Which is an incredible financial milestone, sure. But step back and look at the second-order effects here. We are actively watching the Pentagon completely outsource its most critical orbital infrastructure to a single commercial entity.
Hold on, let me push back on that a bit. Hasn't the government always contracted this stuff out? I mean, NASA didn't physically build the Apollo rockets in a federal garage. Boeing and Grumman built them. What makes it any different? Isn't this just a highly efficient public-private partnership?
It's completely different because of the architecture of the monopoly. Yes, the government bought hardware from Lockheed or Boeing in the past, but SpaceX isn't just selling the truck. They own the only road, they own all the gas stations, and they control the traffic lights.
Ah, I see what you mean.
Look at what is happening with NASA right now. Sawyer Merritt and X-Freeze were posting about the details that just dropped for NASA's newly unveiled master plan. They're building a permanent $20 billion moon base at the lunar South Pole.
Right, the three-phase plan. So phase 1 is robotic scouting through 2029. Phase 2 brings early habitation and nuclear fission power by 2032, which requires hauling 60 tons of cargo to the lunar surface.
A massive payload.
Huge.
Mm-hmm.
And phase 3 is sustained human operations delivering 38 tons annually. And to your point, they're relying almost entirely on SpaceX's Starship to do the heavy lifting.
Exactly. And look, I get the romance of space exploration. The lunar South Pole is a brilliant strategic target. There is near continuous sunlight on the crater rims for solar power and deep, permanently shadowed craters that hold water ice.
Which you need for rocket fuel and, well, keeping people alive.
Right. It is the ultimate high ground. But throw cold water on the sci-fi romance for a second and look at the geopolitical reality. The U.S. military's entire nervous system and NASA's entire roadmap for deep space are now single-point dependent on Elon Musk's hardware.
So you're saying, what?
I'm asking, has NASA essentially become a client state of SpaceX? When one private company controls the launch cadence, the communication network, and the deep space logistics, they are the ones dictating the terms of human expansion, not the government.
That is a heavy thought. The idea that the physical infrastructure of the future is essentially a private toll road.
Yeah.
But if SpaceX is building the physical nervous system of the final frontier, we really need to talk about the digital brain that he's going to run on those networks. Let's pivot to AI because something happened overnight that feels like a massive paradigm shift. Andrew Curran highlighted that Anthropic's new Mythos model just independently solved the Erdo's unit distance problem.
Now, if your eyes are already glazing over at the phrase Erdo's unit distance problem, stay with us. Because the specific math isn't what matters here, it's what the AI actually did.
Right, let me try to explain the problem simply. Back in 1946, the mathematician Paul Erdős posed this deceptively simple geometry question. Imagine scattering coins on a massive flat table.
Okay.
If you want exactly 2 coins to be exactly 1 inch apart, that's easy. But how many coins can you place on the table so that the maximum possible number of pairs are exactly 1 inch apart?
Sounds like a fun puzzle.
It does, but as you scale it up, the math becomes agonizingly complex. It is a notoriously stubborn issue in combinatorics that has frustrated human geniuses for 80 years.
And human mathematicians have been chipping away at it, finding upper and lower bounds, but never fully solving it. Until now?
Exactly. But here's the wild part. The AI didn't just brute force the answer by running 1 trillion calculations until it guessed right. It generated a simple, elegant mathematical proof that organically connected existing ideas in a totally new way. It is a one-shot capability on a completely open problem.
Which brings us to the phrase Curran used in his analysis that we really need to focus on, an overhang in discoveries. People are radically underestimating what this means for society.
I'll admit I'm a little confused by that. I mean, calculating complex math is literally what computers were invented to do. Why is this specific proof such a panic moment for the consensus?
Because there is a massive difference between calculation and reasoning. A calculator can do long division faster than you, but it can't invent a new branch of mathematics.
Oh, I see.
This AI just generated novel human insight. If frontier models now possess the logical reasoning to independently crack open abstract mathematical problems that have stumped humans for decades, the imminent disruption to high-level knowledge work is already here. We aren't just automating repetitive data entry anymore. We are automating the creation of novel ideas.
And to power that level of synthetic reasoning, the underlying software plumbing of the internet is being frantically, desperately upgraded. We are seeing what developers are calling the rustification of the tech stack.
It's happening everywhere.
Yeah, the vLLM project, which is a massive piece of open source AI infrastructure, just announced they merged a new Rust front end to replace their Python API server. The result, a massive 5x throughput gain on pre-process heavy workloads.
Let's explain why that transition from Python to Rust is happening. Think of Python like a really smart, friendly translator who listens to your instructions, translates them into machine language, and then hands them to the computer's processor.
Right, it's easy to read.
Incredibly easy for humans to write, but that translation takes time. Rust, on the other hand, is like learning the computer's native language perfectly. It takes much more effort to write, but it speaks directly to the hardware without the middleman. The GPUs running these AI models have gotten so unfathomably fast that the Python translator is literally choking the pipeline. The brain is waiting on the mouth.
That makes total sense, and we are seeing this exact optimization in the most foundational parts of the web. The Bun JavaScript project noted that shifting to Rust components, specifically using a library called sim.fifs, made their base 64 parsing 41 times faster.
41 times. That is insane.
We are talking about dropping the processing time from 300 microseconds down to 80 microseconds. Base 64 is how the internet translates and sends images and files as plain text. By optimizing it like this, the fundamental data transport of the web gets instantly lighter.
And as these foundational pipes get exponentially faster and start carrying highly sensitive AI-generated insights, corporations have to lock them down.
Yeah, security is paramount.
Peter Steinberger from the OpenClaw Foundation recently surveyed the community on what the definitive 2026 enterprise software stack looks like, the overwhelming consensus. You use Okta for single sign-on, paired with CrowdStrike Falcon for endpoint security.
Because identity is the new perimeter. If AI agents can seamlessly impersonate human reasoning, knowing exactly who is logging into your network is the only defense you have, shoring up the fortress while making the pipes infinitely faster.
But I want to critique this whole industry obsession with micro-optimizations for a second.
Wait, why? Speed is good.
Yes, dropping processing time to 80 microseconds is great, but we are throwing massive brute force computing power at problems and ignoring foundational algorithmic elegance. Look at the viral thread right now from the Meta researcher Lucas Bayer. People are suddenly obsessed with an 11-year-old paper he wrote called Viternian nets.
Okay, if you're throwing around words like Viternian and neural nets, you're going to lose me and probably the listener. Break this down. What was the actual problem this researcher was solving 11 years ago that is suddenly so relevant today?
He was trying to get AI to understand how a human head rotates in a video. The problem is circular data. A standard AI model looks at a compass, sees 359 degrees and 1 degree, and because of the numbers, it thinks they are mathematically on opposite ends of a massive spectrum.
It doesn't realize they touch.
Exactly. It doesn't intuitively understand that they are right next to each other. Instead of just throwing a massive supercomputer at the problem to force the AI to memorize every angle, Bayer used a concept called a Biternian, a 2D quaternion, to build an architecture that actually understood the physical circular nature of the problem.
So instead of giving the AI a massive textbook of numbers, he basically taught the AI that the compass is actually a circle.
Yes, it's a masterclass in problem-specific design. My point is, despite all this modern hype about rewriting everything in Rust for 41x speedups, true innovation often requires looking backward. It requires elegant, thoughtful design, not just throwing a trillion-parameter brute force engine at a badly framed problem.
Which perfectly brings us to what happens when you take that exact same ruthless engineering mindset, the obsession with squeezing every microsecond of efficiency out of a system, and point it at human biology.
Here we go.
This is where the Silicon Valley tech mindset is bleeding into our physical bodies. There's fascinating Phase 2 data out today, posted by Kremi Raku, about BMB 101. It's a new sleep drug from Bright Minds Biosciences. Technically, it's a selective 5-HT2C agonist, and they were testing it on patients suffering from absence seizures.
And let's clarify what an agonist is for the audience. Think of the human brain as a massive switchboard. An agonist is basically a chemical key designed to fit perfectly into one very specific lock to flip a single switch.
Right.
In this case, the 5-HT2C lock regulates serotonin and sleep architecture. So what happened when they flipped the switch?
The results were staggering. It increased the patient's REM sleep, the deep restorative dream state by 90%.
Mm-hmm.
They went from 56 minutes to over 106 minutes of REM.
Wow.
Simultaneously, it dropped their major motor seizures by over 60%. But here's the crazy part. It did all of this without increasing their total sleep time. They still only slept for 9 hours, but the internal architecture of that sleep was fundamentally upgraded and compressed. It is a medical miracle.
Is it a medical miracle, or are we looking at the foundation of a new corporate dystopia?
Come on, really.
Connect this back to the two-tiered economy we opened the show with.
Huh.
The 15% margin world of the elite versus the 8% margin world of the workers. If we can pharmacologically compress and optimize the restorative benefits of 9 hours of sleep into, say, 4 hours, how long until the corporate expectation is that you simply take an orexin agonist so you can sleep less and work more?
But wait, if you're someone suffering from debilitating daily seizures, you don't care about the philosophical risks of corporate productivity hacks. This drug is literally giving you your life back. Aren't you being incredibly cynical to look at a drug that stops seizures and immediately call it a dystopia?
I'm not denying the profound medical benefit for those specific patients. That is genuinely incredible. I am questioning the systemic application of the technology once it scales.
Okay, fair point.
If your employer knows you can get a full biological recovery in 4 hours, they are not going to let you use those extra 5 waking hours to paint watercolors or play with your kids. They are going to expect you to answer emails. We are beginning to treat human biology exactly like that vLLM Python server. We view it as a legacy bottleneck, waiting for a biochemical rust front-end replacement so we can squeeze more throughput out of the worker.
Wow. Biologically productivity hacking the workforce. That is a dark, but honestly entirely plausible read. And it perfectly sets up our final segment, looking at how this intersection of hyperoptimization, elite wealth, and AI is reshaping global culture and status.
Yeah, the vibes are shifting.
Let's start with global geopolitics. Amjad Masad, the CEO of Replit, just received a massive medal of distinction from Jordan's King Abdullah II during their 80th Independence Day celebrations. The medal was explicitly to honor his role in accelerating agentic AI globally.
This is a massive vibe shift that people really need to pay attention to. Think about the cultural archetype of a tech founder 10 or 15 years ago.
The guy in the hoodie in a garage.
Exactly. They were viewed as these quirky, awkward coding nerds. Now, they are being treated as sovereign geopolitical assets. Nations are rolling out the red carpet for them. Kings are giving them medals. Because governments now recognize that having homegrown talent controlling agentic AI is as critical to national security as controlling oil reserves or orbital space networks.
And all that concentrated wealth flowing to these tech leaders from that 15% margin economy, it is completely changing the face of luxury. The analyst Trung Fan did a brilliant breakdown of Ferrari's newly announced Loose EV.
Oh, this car is causing a meltdown.
Oh, completely. It was designed in collaboration with Jony Ive, the legendary Apple designer, and traditional car enthusiasts are tearing their hair out over its unconventional look. But Trung points out that the design isn't for traditional gearheads. It is perfectly targeted at China, which now makes up 12% of Ferrari's market. And crucially, 26% of those buyers in China are women, which is the highest share in the world.
Which means the marketing strategy has to completely abandon the traditional playbook.
Exactly. Trung highlights that the flagship colorway of the EV is cosmic orange. And it isn't an accident. It intentionally mimics Apple's Hermes orange, the exact specific shade of leather that drove $26 billion in iPhone 17 Pro sales in China.
Let's unpack the absolute cynicism of this product. It has nothing to do with automotive engineering anymore. You don't buy a Ferrari EV to hear a roaring V12 engine. The EV is silent.
Yeah, no engine noise.
They stripped away the core differentiator of the brand. What is left is pure Veblen good signaling. It is the intersection of government mandates pushing electric vehicles with high-end luxury aesthetics. They literally hired the guy who designed the iPhone to design a silent car that comes in Apple Hermes orange. The Ferrari is no longer a performance vehicle. It is a wearable tech accessory for the global elite. It's an iPhone you can sit inside.
But here's the kicker. Even a Hermes orange EV isn't the ultimate status symbol anymore. The ultimate flex in 2026 isn't a car, it's time and itself.
Ah, longevity.
Right. Bill Ackman just proved this by detailing the opening of an ultra-exclusive gym called Vosk on East 57th Street in Manhattan. It was opened by his personal physical therapist, and it's not just a place to lift heavy things. They bundle intense Alico kettlebell training with sensory deprivation tanks, ice plunges, steam rooms, and clinical VO2 max testing.
And of course, they are strictly capping memberships. It is entirely gated off to the public.
Right. It is this beautiful, intimate, aggressively curated space that completely integrates medical-grade physical therapy with elite athletic training. It is the holistic integration of human performance.
And it drives home the final, deeply cynical point of our entire deep dive today. Look at what the true elite are pooling their capital to buy right now.
Yeah, what's the end game?
They aren't just buying low Earth orbit internet from SpaceX or wearable tech EV Ferraris. They're trying to buy back their own mortality. They're taking all of the concepts we've discussed today, the rapid algorithmic optimization, the relentless performance benchmarking, and they are applying it directly to their own flesh and blood.
Hacking themselves.
Exactly. They are treating the human body exactly like Base 64 code parsing. It is just another system to be aggressively benchmarked, fine-tuned, and optimized so they can survive the very two-tiered economy they helped create.
So as we look across all these signals, from the macroeconomic divide to the privatization of the moon, from AI spontaneously solving abstract math to the elites biohacking their REM sleep, what is your specific prediction for tomorrow?
Well, based on the sheer terror of that market divergence we discussed at the top of the show, I predict that by tomorrow, we will see a massive non-tech legacy brand clumsily announce a pivot to agentic AI simply to try and stop their stock from collapsing into that 8% margin abyss.
Oh, I could totally see that.
Either that, or we will see a legacy aerospace defense contractor formally begin lobbying Congress to break up SpaceX's monopoly over government launch contracts. The pressure on the legacy systems, both financial and governmental, is just too high to ignore. Something has to snap.
Which leaves you, the listener, with this final thought to mull over. If AI models are now independently generating novel proofs for decades-old math problems, and biotech is fundamentally hacking our brain's architecture to compress our physical recovery, at what point does our baseline, unoptimized biological reality just become another legacy system waiting to be replaced by a faster front end? Stay vigilant in a market that never sleeps. We'll catch you on the next one.